What I bought? A new Blink Mini 2K Plus smart security camera. What I got? 2K clarity sharp enough to see every detail of home when I'm away. Plus audio like I'm in the room, not with my bestie traveling to another city. Plus easy plug-in setup to install faster than skipping through podcast ads. But you'd never skip ads, right? Plus, I got all of this for just $49.99. Blink Mini 2K Plus. Mini camera, max performance. Shop now at amazon.com/blink.
Welcome to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm entertainer-writer Jim Hill, and Mr. Taylor, whose writings on the industry you can regularly read over on The Wrap, and whose musings on the Mission Impossible movies you can listen to on the Light the Fuse podcast. He and I are recording this week's show on Sunday, May 7th, 2023. So how are you today, Drew?
I'm good, Jim. I just got a haircut, so I'm feeling lighter and brighter. I've got the Little Mermaid world premiere tomorrow, so I got to look good for Sebastian and the whole gang. So,
you see. All right, quick question: they actually use scissors when they're cutting your hair, right? You know that.
Well, I think industrial grade garden shears.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
And again, it just gives you some point where I am in my life. You know, I don't go to a fancy LA barber. I go to Supercuts where they literally treat me like I'm a sheep. You know, it's like they have the two guards that they use on the electric razor for me. I think one cuts it at 2/8 of an inch and the other one got 3/8 of an inch. My haircut takes roughly 3 minutes. They sometimes stretch it out with a little conversation, but it's just sort of, okay, you're out of here.
It's like you're back in the army, Jim.
Oh,
Truly
this
like
is
you're
true.
back in the army.
This is true. But even then, I feel like they took more time then. Of course, I had more hair then. So, all right. So, as I mentioned, we're recording today's show on Sunday, May 7th, and we're just now getting the hard numbers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This was the opening weekend. Did 114 million in North America. That is a bit down from what they were saying on Friday. Weren't the initial domestic projections around 120 million?
Yeah, I think that was a little optimistic. I thought it was always going to be closer to 110. So I think 114 is actually a good showing.
Okay.
It's a wonderful film. I know you're waiting for the cheapo night to go watch it.
We are going on Tuesday, and yes, that is cheapo. Okay. Now, mind you, if you fold in the 168 million that this James Gunn movie made overseas, that means that currently Guardians Volume 3 sits at $282 million over its opening weekend, over $250 million. Nice chunk of change. But on the other hand, speaking of $1 billion, if you remember what Drew said on last week's show about what was about to happen with the Super Mario Brothers movie, which today is in its 5th weekend in theaters, it had absolutely no trouble at all blowing through that barrier. In fact, you were saying it was starting in Japan and China, I want to say?
Yeah, I believe that was last weekend, yeah.
Okay.
So you saw a whole new round of press with Miyamoto and everything. So yeah, it's going well.
Well, no, absolutely. In fact, right now, stateside, this Illuminations Universal Nintendo production sits at 518 million in stateside ticket sales, 637 million overseas, worldwide gross of $1,155 million. It's the highest grossing film to date for all of 2023. That said, though, did you see that we now have a video on demand date for Mario? And I'm kind of shocked at how close it is. I mean, it's 9 days away, right? It's Tuesday. Oh, dear Lord, I counted it wrong. It's 2 days away.
It's when this episode drops, Jim. You can get the...
Oh, my God. Really? I still have trouble wrapping my head around this is how the world works now. This thing is still in theaters. Isn't it number 2 behind Guardians this weekend?
Yeah.
All right. But the thinking is you want to do this. You want to make a title like this available on VOD while it's still in theaters for all those parents who are like, oh, God, just let me have a film I can put on repeat and keep the kids quiet for a day. And more to the point that they're willing to pay top dollar for the opportunity to have a digital version of this.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly didn't slow down Puss in Boots.
It did not. It did
That
not.
played forever. I think it's still in theaters actually right
Mhm.
now, and it was on VOD almost immediately after it was in theaters. So yeah,
This is true. This is true. Though, one of the reasons that VOD has become such a strong part of the equation is to make up for the fact that sales of physical media, the Blu-ray, the DVDs, have fallen through the floor. That said, I was kind of shocked today while I was doing research for today's show. Did you know that the Blu-ray DVD digital version of Disney's Strange World went on sale back on February 14th of this year? Did you hear anything about that?
no, I had no idea. The only thing I knew was that you can't even buy a 4K in a big box store or an Amazon. That's actually a Disney Movie Club exclusive.
Oh, are you kidding me?
So they didn't even shell out for the additional format. Yeah.
Holy cow. Because I was
Yeah.
about to say that Nancy and I are in Target at least 3 times a week. We frequent 2 Targets in our local area. And in the past 3 months, I've never seen a single copy of Strange World in either of these stores. I mean, normally they're on an end cap and just nothing. I'm going to go in fact, tomorrow. I have a grocery run I do while Nancy's off teaching water aerobics. And, I'm going to go searching for this film to see if there's one actually out there. Because right now, and I think this is kind of the saddest commentary on what went on with this film, the only place I can find a copy of it is on Amazon, and it's 50% off. Anyway, strange time in the animation industry. Lots of news yet to share, folks. And speaking of news, the news portion of this week's Fine Tuning is brought to you by Storybook Destination, trusted travel partner of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. For a worry-free travel experience every time, please book online at storybookdestinations.com. Back to Super Mario Brothers movie for a moment. This Illuminations Universal Nintendo film, 5th highest grossing animated feature in Hollywood history, 2nd highest grossing for Universal Pictures. It's very close behind the first Minions movie, that Despicable Me spinoff that was released to theaters 8 years ago in the spring of 2015. Which you'd think would be a time of celebration for those who handle animation on that side of Universal, the folks who work at Illuminations, as well as the folks who work at DreamWorks Animation. But nope, late last month, they laid off 33 employees, 2% of the workforce who work at the DreamWorks Glendale campus. Mind you, Drew, this was not related at all to the writer's strike. In fact, I wanted to ask, you've seen the picket lines around town?
Oh yeah, Jim, I'm honking all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go to a few studios last week, and it was like, how do I get in and get out before they show up? Because I do not want to cross a picket line, even though I was just there for a screening or whatever meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very uncomfortable situation, and we obviously stand by the WGA and hope that they resolve this soon, because it's costing people a lot of money.
It is. And I think you saw over the weekend we had our first, Blade, which again has been struggling to get off the pad anyway. They postponed the start of production, which I want to say was in June. But to get back to the laugh at DreamWorks, again, nothing due to the writer's strike, but rather it was DreamWorks Animation Management that was just trying to comply with orders coming down from on high from NBC Universal, which is continuing to trim staff across various divisions of that entertainment conglomerate. This is all part of that effort to keep Wall Street happy, this conceit that Wall Street has that, you have to cut, is it 8 or 7% of your head count?
Yeah, it's between 6 and 7. It's weird that every studio has to cut by the same number, isn't it, Jim? It's almost like it was dictated by a bunch of Wall Street goons, the same Wall Street goons, in fact, who said, put everything in streaming. That's the future. And are now saying, cut the fat.
Well, all right, just to be clear here, I'm told that most of the positions that were cut were in support roles at that animation studio. I mean, jobs like lighter, compositor, tech director. Also, work continues on the next 3 films from DreamWorks Animation. We have Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, which arrives in theaters June 30th. Trolls Band Together, that's November 17th of this year. And then Kung Fu Panda, which is out in theaters March 8th of next year. Now, speaking of DreamWorks Animation, Bill Damashek, Does that sound right? Am I doing it right?
Yes, the old DreamWorks guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the old DreamWorks guy who just officially got tapped to be the head of the Warner's animation group. And he's got kind of an interesting history. I mean, he got in literally on the ground floor at DreamWorks when it was founded, DreamWorks Animation, in fall of 1994. As the story goes, Jeffrey Katzenberg had some dealing with Damashek over at Disney. Bill was a PA on Pocahontas. And evidently, Jeffrey liked Bill's hustle and invited him to come on over and join him as they got this new animation studio up out of the ground. And Bill eventually oversaw DreamWorks animated features like Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon, and The Croods. He was also heavily involved in DreamWorks' expansion into live theater, Shrek the Musical, which went to Broadway in December of 2008, and the How to Train Your Dragons live spectacular. Did you ever see that, Drew?
No, I wanted to. It looked really cool, actually.
Yeah, it kind of killed me.
It was not?
Well, no, don't get me wrong. I had literally scheduled a thing to go out to LA when I got the invite to come for press day. They were stopping in Worcester, Massachusetts. So Nancy went in my place, and it's literally I'm out in LA. Well, how was it today? Oh, it was so cool. You know, it was the guys who did the Walking with Dinosaurs arena show. Yep. But it was all of the dragons from the film done in 3D. And the nice thing about the press thing is you're actually on the floor of the arena getting up close to these things, petting them and that sort of thing. And again, to this day, it was like, oh, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nancy got to do the cool thing. Oh, speaking of DreamWorks stage stuff, though, back in March of 2019, it was announced that Susan Stroman, the woman who directed the Tony Award-winning version of Mel Brooks' The Producers, when it debuted on Broadway back in 2001, it was announced that she would be directing a new musical for the stage based on DreamWorks Animation Kung Fu Panda. The show was supposed to be tried out of town, like way out of town, Drew, like at the Venetian Casino in Macau, but then the pandemic happened and plans for the stage show were shelved. So it's going to be interesting to see if Kung Fu Panda 4 proves to be a big success next March, whether DreamWorks and Universal circle back on this idea of the stage musical based on Kung Fu Panda. Anyway, back to Bill Damashek right now. 2017, he left DreamWorks, went over to Skydance Animation, once again getting a fledgling animation studio up out of the ground, only to then step aside when John Lasseter took up the reins over there. Speaking of which, what are we hearing about Spellbound? We still haven't seen a trailer? Haven't seen a poster?
No trailer. It'll be at Annecy, so if I make it there, Jim, I will report back on what from Spellbound is shown. But,
okay.
Yeah.
So, all right.
It's supposed to be this year still. We don't know. We don't know. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Just fascinated about that project. Anywho, we were just talking about fledgling operations. Speaking of fledglings, did you hear about Incas, the Rama for Incas, the new animated musical that's supposed to be built around, well, not only a small flying dinosaur, but a score that the Sherman Brothers started back in the 1950s? Did you see anything about this?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Jim. Please tell us more.
Okay. Disney fans are definitely going to want to check out this project because it features a score written by the late Robert B. and Richard M. Sherman, the Academy Award winners behind Mary Poppins, not to mention theme songs from some of your favorite Disney theme park attractions like It's a Small World and Journey into Imagination. And as the story goes, the Sherman Brothers, long before they began working for Walt, tried to turn Incas, which was based on this children's record, which was released in 1951. Their idea, they wanted to turn it into a full-length animated feature. But when they got hired by Walt Disney Productions, I want to say they wasn't their initial gig writing songs for Annette Funicello, Hawaiian Annette, or something like that. I mean, only then that led to Poppins and the like. Anyway, Richard and Robert set Incas aside. Okay, we now jump ahead to the mid-2000s. Robert B's son, who goes by the name Robbie, came across the songs that the Sherman Brothers had written in the mid-1950s for Incas and decided that this was a project worth reviving. So at Robbie's urging, Richard M. and Robert B. revisit the project and write 6 additional songs for the proposed animated feature, which raises the number of songs they've written for the score for this film to 10. And what supposedly happened is Incus, the Ramaphorinkus, came within inches of going into production in the late 2000s, only to then get derailed by the financial crisis of 2008. Just flat out, the money fell through. And then, sadly, both Richard and Robert passed, but in 2020, Robbie Sherman co-founds Sherman Theatrical Entertainment Limited with Brett Golden and Andrew Kaplan, and they then went out and actually acquired the IP rights to the original children's record for 51, which now, with the help of Niels Juhl and his business partner Sophie Nordstrom, they're reviving the project, again, with this never-before-heard Sherman Brothers score. And Robbie goes on to say that he grew up with Incus. It was something that was in the piano bench at the house, and his dad would periodically play songs from the movie that never got made. He said, I knew all the characters, and I knew their songs by heart. I've always believed that if the rest of the world would introduce them, they would fall in love with these characters as well.
Just one correction, Jim. Richard Sherman is actually still alive. He's 94. But he is still alive.
That's right. I apologize.
Robert passed away a few years ago.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Forgive me for making a really rude joke here, but yes, Richard M. is still with us. His hairline passed away many years ago.
That's true. That is true.
It's the world's worst comb over. I mean, I say that as a bald guy, all right? Just sort of like, oh my God. So Incus is expected to be released theatrically at a yet-to-be-determined date, which I know is vague, but yeah, these things take time. I mean, to make a comparison here, Mushka, Andreas Deja's decade-in-the-works hand-drawn animation featurette, just had its European premiere at the Stuttgart International Festival for an animated film. So these things take time, again, a decade's here, a decade there. Suddenly you're talking 50 years. Speaking of which, were you ever able to get a hold of Andreas?
No, I'll reach out to him again maybe this week and see what I can dig up about Mushkan. And,
yeah, I mean, I really...
Hopefully we can get him on the show. And
that would be great. That would be great. Okay, what's wonderful about what Andreas has done here, hand-drawn animated featurette. And speaking of hand-drawn animation, when we get back, Drew and I are going to talk about kind of an interesting phenomena in the animation world from the 1990s, and that was cell reproductions. But first, this.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men.
The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
Before we get to cell reproduction, suddenly it sounds like it's a biology podcast, folks. A moment ago, we were talking about Shrek the Musical and the aborted stage version of Kung Fu Panda. And of course, the reason that DreamWorks began developing projects for Broadway was the enormous success that Disney was having with its stage shows, based on animated features. These things were long-running, money-making machines. And case in point, just yesterday, Drew, May 6th, the Disney stage version of The Lion King presented its 10,000th 1,000th performance on Broadway. It started off at the New Amsterdam and moved to the Minskoff. In fact, I think it moved to the Minskoff to make room for Mary Poppins, right? And it's been there.
I still have never seen Lion King on
We
Broadway.
have to change it. When are
I
you
know.
coming back to the East Coast? I will call friends in Disney Theatrical and you and your bride. It's one of those things that actually does hold up. But more to the point, I'm kind of surprised that you didn't see this when it was at the Pantages. What was it, in February of March of this year? Because you saw what happened on the very last episode of the Late Show.
Oh yes, and I was even tipped off to that performance, but I couldn't get it together in time to get down there for it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what Drew is referring to is that for one performance of this show, the actors who played Timon and Pumbaa stayed backstage, and James went on stage dressed as Timon, and that night, performing in the role of Pumbaa was one Mr. Thomas Cruise. Did you get to see the stuff on CBS?
I thought that was such a great little bit. I mean, it was amazing. Their chemistry is so great.
Oh yeah,
it was really funny.
It made me want to circle back on. I never saw the one where he was teaching James how to fly jets.
Oh yes, that's great too. Yeah.
That sounded like a great bit. I'll have to chase that down.
Tom needs to do another musical after. Rock of Ages is not very good, but he is wonderful in it. And it's also fun to see a movie that was shot entirely in Florida for some reason.
This is true.
Yes.
This is true. Okay, so now to get to the topic of cell reproductions, can you talk about how this came on your radar, like, dear Lord, 30 years ago, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to the parks a lot back then, and obviously the animation component of Disney MGM Studios, which Jim will eventually get to in his Instagram series that he has been unleashing. But there was an entire store next door that sold cell reproductions, and then, I rewatched some of the in-room videos that people have put on YouTube, and there's this really funny sales pitch for them basically in the middle of one of these in-room videos where Roy is talking about the fidelity and the quality. And so I just wondered, where did these come from? Like, where did this market come from? Why isn't it around anymore? I know there aren't any Disney stores anymore because they also did sell them through the catalog. I remember that too.
They did. They did. What's fascinating is, well, cells have been part of the Disney park experience since, I want to say the Art Corner opened in 58, 59 in Tomorrowland.
Okay.
It'll kill you to hear this, but you could go in there and there were actual cells that had been pulled from shorts that the studio had done, from features. And if you could pony up a whole $1.50, Drew, you could take one of these things home.
Oh, my God.
All right. But Disney fell out of the practice in the 60s or thereabouts. And in fact, there were these stories about when they would finish production of an animated feature. And during the wrap party, it was a tradition to line the super long hallway on the first floor of the animation building with cells from the film. And the animators would start running at the end of the hallway and then jump on the cells, and kind of like when you're back east and a sidewalk is frozen and you can slide for 20 or 30 feet, that sort of thing. That's what they do on the cells.
Oh, my God.
Dave Smith once told me the story about in the early days of the archive. I mean, he literally would spend his lunch hour walking around the studio looking for things to put in the archive. I think on the show, we've talked about that time he opened a janitor's closet, and there in the top shelf were a full set of maquettes for Pinocchio. And he asked the janitor, where'd you get these? And it's like, oh, they were in the trash. They finished working in the movie, and I thought they were cool, so I kept them. So they've been up there for 10 years. And, and Dave was like, well, can I take them for the archive? And it's like, well, they're mine. It's like, I fished them out of the trash. They're mine. And I think he and Dave eventually came to an understanding. But speaking of the trash, Dave is wandering around the Disney lot one day and happens to look at a dumpster, and there in the dumpster is a 4-foot tall stack of cells from the Aristocats. And Dave literally reaches down into this dumpster, scoops up this pile and takes it back to the archive and goes through them. And yeah, not all of them are great, but there's a bunch worth saving, and he just throws them in a box and puts them in a corner. And then I want to say this was, it's got to be 76, 77. The company decides they want to get into the cell business again. I mean, mind you, you've got to have seen some of the Cavassier stuff they did in the 30s, right? Snow White and Pinocchio, the things that were mounted on wood.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say that cells are a very weird kind of shape to them too.
Yeah. Well, no.
They're not the most, you don't want to sort of put them on a wall, but which makes this whole kind of enterprise weird to me as well.
Oh, no. Absolutely. And this also tells you a lot about what was going on at the company at the time, that, we need some new revenue streams because, frankly, nobody's going to our movies. And so they began to contact art galleries around the country. And in fact, I remember I was managing the Acton Twin Cinema in Acton, Massachusetts, and there was it was a tiny mini mall sort of just off to the side of the theater. And I want to say it was called the Art Corner, run by Bert Worreby. And what was interesting is they sold Disney cells in there. And I kind of befriended the Worribys, and every couple of weeks I would save up my pennies. And again, now at this point, they're no longer $1.50, they're $150 a piece. But by the time I stopped managing the cinema there, I think I had 4 or 5 cells on my wall. I had something from the Rescuers. I had a Pete's Dragon. I had a really great Prince John from Robin Hood. And Disney, in its infinite wisdom during this period, because they had already discovered that, and you talked about not only the weird shape of the cells, but it was a weird medium to put paint on. And they found out the hard way that, those cells from the 30s and the 40s, the paint would begin to flake off over time. And so what Disney decided to do with the cells from the 60s and the 70s is they laminated them. They literally took a piece of plastic and on top of the cell and then used heat to seal the paint in, which after 2 and 3 years, they learned the hard way that they would now separate and the paint chips would fall down into the cell off of the image. It was kind of horrifying. And, especially for those of us who spent, our hard-earned dough on getting Disney cells. So, which brings us to what Drew's talking about here, the cell reproductions. That as Disney began to have its second golden age of animation, in fact, you can chase these down on eBay these days, but they had big auctions of, what was it? They had a Little Mermaid auction. They had a Roger Rabbit auction, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. I mean, and the thing was that those auctions really inflated the value of animation cells at that time. So there were a lot of folks who wanted to get Disney animation cells that just couldn't afford them at that price point. And so this is when Disney began to produce these cell reproductions. They would find key moments from animated features, and sometimes they were the actual pose from the film. I want to say the, what was it, Lady and the Tramp, Lady and Tramp having dinner. Likewise, Pinocchio, skipping on his way to school, that sort of thing. And they would find one cell that really captured that moment. And then it was a question of matching the paint, matching the line work. At this moment where Disney's creating this new revenue stream, in fact, I was just rereading the history of The Little Mermaid, where they talk about, I'm blanking the name of the thing that Pixar created, the paint program.
Oh, Caps. Yeah.
Caps, yes. There were a couple of both CG animated elements in Little Mermaid. I want to say Eric's boat. There was a staircase. I also want to say the rowboat in Kiss the Girl. But the big deal was the scene at the very end of the film that was done with caps, which meant that all of the very talented ladies who'd been at Disney for decades working in ink and paint were soon to be out of a job.
Well, the funny story about that scene at the end of Little Mermaid, Jim. I forget which animator told me this, but they had actually printed the rainbow in the reverse order of the colors. So I don't know if they fixed it, but apparently the first time they did it, it was like the reverse spectrum.
Oh,
yeah,
dear.
yeah. That's how new the caps technology was, that nobody really understood what it was. And yeah, it's a very funny anecdote from there. But yes.
Well into the 90s. In fact, those of us who remember the Disney Store catalog that would show up at the house every month or thereabouts. The thing about the cell reproduction, I think, particularly if you'd bought real cells, there was just something that kind of stuck in your craw about, I don't want a reproduction, I want a real one. But they had one that they did for Hunchback, where it was Quasi with the three gargoyles. It was a wonderful pose, and it was part of the big retail push for that particular film in 96, and it was just like, I came within inches of buying that. But starting in 1995, with the arrival of Toy Story, it was just this fascinating sort of side phenomenon where the bottom kind of fell out of the collecting market for hand-drawn animation. Just the whole notion of, the old stuff, that's good, but the CG stuff, that's cool, that's new, that's hot. I'm sure you get the Van Eaton catalogs for each of the auctions that they're doing.
Yeah. Well, I was just in there. I sent you audio of a...
You did.
Of an auction going on.
Wow. I mean, how much did somebody get for that cow,
Yeah,
Drew?
they were selling some pretty funny stuff, but I think we could actually do a live show from in there sometime if you ever want to do that, Jim.
I would love to do that.
Wonderful space. Yeah. It's right on Ventura Boulevard now. It's just great. And, this is also something that kind of sparked me because I saw they had an original Who Framed Roger Rabbit cell, which was only like $850.
Those cells that went for thousands of dollars in the late 80s, early 90s, now on the secondary market, the prices have plummeted. In fact, the next time Van Eaton has an auction, contact them and get what things actually sold for, the sheet after the fact. And what's sad for me is so often pieces of hand-drawn animation that are put out there don't meet their reserve, that people are just not willing to pay top dollar anymore for real cells that were, produced, in the actual production of the film. And the cell reproductions, that market's been hammered on even harder. People are like, well, that's a reproduction. That's not real. Whatever. I'm not going to pay top dollar for an actual cell. Why should I pay for a reproduction? And which makes me think now would be a really good time for me to go hunting for that Hunchback cell.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it makes me also think, Jim, that at Fox, and I cannot believe I never bought one of these, but they had a little store, and by the cash register was literally like a, plastic tub of Simpsons cells, original Simpsons cells, dating back to the early 90s. I mean, and you could just rifle through. Oh, there's Frank Grimes. It was really amazing, and they were like $25 or something. And I never bought them, and I never know why, and I'm sure they're gone now that Disney owns Fox, but it was really amazing. But you have 500 episodes or whatever, you're gonna have an excess of these cells,
Oh, no. Totally. Oh, before I forget, you were so nice the last week to sort of give us the rundown on Star Wars Vision Season 2.
Did you watch?
And I'm in the process of watching right now. That in fact, I stopped so we could record this.
Did you watch Unicorn Warriors Eternal yet?
Not yet. But I wanted to ask you about Rogue Almost One. What did we think of that?
That was very silly. I just watched it last night. I thought it was fine. I mean, we love David Silverman. He's the man.
It always does my heart good to see David's name. Because again, people forget, co-director of the original Monsters, Inc.
Yes. And if you ever see Michael Giacchino out in the wild, and there's a crazy man in a top hat next to him, that is David Silverman. Just remember that. He was in Werewolf by Night. He was the guy playing the tuba on fire.
Was he really? Yes. Oh,
yes.
no.
Yeah.
Okay, now I got to go back and watch
Yeah.
that. So, and speaking of going back to watch things, out ahead of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, I mean, how do you and Charles get ready for the new films? Do you guys
a lot of push-ups?
revisit?
A lot of push-ups, Jim. That's the first thing. No, we're ready. We're gonna start our big Dead Reckoning Part 1 push very soon. Before that, though, Jim, I wanted to plug something that I will be hosting a chat with none other than Craig McCracken at Gallery Nucleus this Saturday, the Saturday after this goes up. And then the next week, I will be doing a Puss in Boots panel at the Gallery Nucleus. So come out.
Oh, so cool.
See me talk to some amazing people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Craig, we're going to be talking about his whole career. There's going to be some really great stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, more Puss in Boots fun.
Seriously, folks, they do so many great things at Gallery Nucleus, but I love, when didn't you do the Bad Guys thing with them as well?
I didn't do the bad. I did. The last thing I did with them was DuckTales, which was really great.
There we go.
It was really great. Yeah, it's gonna be really fun. So anyway, if you can make it to either of those, I think you can actually watch it online too. So
even better.
Yeah.
Even better. Okay. And speaking of great stuff, if you are not listening to Drew's Light the Fuse podcast, folks, you are missing out on some amazing stories. Mr. Taylor, along with his equally talented co-host, Charles Hood, take you behind the scenes, well, not just on Mission Impossible, but also John Wick. And are you stunned at how much money John Wick 4 is making?
I'm happy. I loved John. Did you see it, Jim? You didn't see it. Too long for you. 3 hours. Too much killing.
This is true, and again, I'm still not over the dog thing.
Yes,
and in fact, that's kind of why I'm kind of hesitant going into Guardians Volume 3. I've been hearing a lot about the animal stuff, and it's
yes, it's a lot. But yeah, I'm happy John Wick made so much, but we know that if there's anybody that can challenge the Super Mario Brothers crown, I think it is Mr. Ethan Hunt and the gang.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. So, all right. Well, anyway, be sure and check that out, folks. By the way, we have a couple other podcasts here you might want to check out. We, of course, have Disney Dish that I do with Lynn Testa. Likewise, we have Marvelous Disney, which I do with Aaron Adams. And speaking of which, Aaron is busy right now editing. And God, I apologize. It took us 6 weeks to do this. But a brand new episode of Looking at Lucasfilm. Beyond that, tell you what, folks, if you could do Drew and I a favor, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review, well, not just the show you're listening to right now, Fine Tuning, but also Light the Fuse. That would be very helpful. Likewise, if you want to head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be cool too. Which brings us to the social media portion. I mean, I'm still on Twitter, and you are?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah, I mean, it is becoming so difficult to navigate, but
it is. And again, that's one of the reasons why I'm now finally doing things on Instagram, but it's still feeling my way. In fact, weren't you just giving me guff about the whole McDonald's Guardians Volume 3?
Yes, I was.
So
this is what Alice is going to pick through when you're gone, Jim. She's going to say, why did he collect every Guardians of the Galaxy?
I
thought they were done with the hard plastic stuff, actually. So I was amazed to see that.
Well, the story I heard, and that in 2001, McDonald's announced that, because everybody's, kind of looking at the microplastics in all aspects of our food and water and that sort of thing. It's like, maybe we shouldn't do that anymore. So they announced that they were going to discontinue the use of plastics for Happy Meal toys, and with an end date of 2025. And so evidently they started doing it with cloth toys and paper toys, and people rebelled. So this set of plastic toys for the Guardians Volume 3 is one of these, okay, all right, if you're going to be, bitchy about it, okay, we'll make some more. But that 2025 date is still set in stone. In fact, Disney also is doing the same thing with its single-time use of plastic, I think is the term they use.
They've gotten rid of bags in the park, the single-use bags. So yeah.
Well, yes, but the point of purchase, the poor cast members who work at the cash registers who are like, oh, and would you like a bag? It's an extra $1 or $50 or $2, and they're the ones taking the heat from the guests who complain. And now more money. But again, it's good for the environment. And plus, you can do like I do. Like here at the house, I've got my 50th anniversary bag full of batteries, for the various devices around the house.
Dear God.
So,
Jim, there'll be a wellness check tomorrow. So I'm going to send one of the boys over from county to take a look.
All right, I'll start cleaning now. Anyway, all right. I guess that's going to do it for this week, folks. Thanks so much for listening. And Mr. Taylor will be back with a report of what it was like to be there. Now, El Capitan, not the Dolby, right?
No, it is only the Dolby, because I think I can say this since this show will come out after the premiere, but I think it's because it's a cost-cutting measure. Because if they don't open the El Cap, then they don't have to close the street down. And they can do the party either on the roof, which is what they did for Guardians, or at the Roosevelt across the street, which is what they're doing for Little Mermaid. And everybody wins. It's if it keeps more people employed, Jim, that's all I want, so yeah.
That's same thing here. Okay, well, all right. Enjoy your time at the party at the Roosevelt. And we'll get the full details next week. But till then, thanks for listening, folks, and we'll be back soon.